Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Padavajikacharya Ashtotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padavajikacharya Ashtotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavina ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Okay. All righty. Got a new marker, I told you. Sorry? I got a new bookmark. No one will steal this one. Bhushan, Haribol. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of March, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Text 31 at the bottom of 561. Yada Bhuta Pratag Bhavam Ekastam Anupashyati Tata Eva Chavistaram Brahma Sampadhyate Tada Yada Bhuta Pratag Bhavam Ekastam Anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Brahma sampadhyate tada Yada bhuta pratag bhavam Ekastam anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Brahma sampadhyate tada Yada bhuta pratag bhavam Ekastam anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Brahma sampadhyate tada. Ushan, go ahead. Yada bhuta pratag bhavam Ekastam anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Sampadhyate tada. Yada bhuta pratag bhavam Ekastam anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Brahma sampadhyate tada. Go ahead. Yada bhuta pratag bhavam Ekastam anupashyati Tata eva cha vistaram Brahma sampadhyate tada. Word by words. Hare Krishna. Yada, when, bhuta, of living entities, pritag bhavam, separated identities, ekastam, situated in one, anupashyati, one tries to see through authority, tatah eva, thereafter, cha, also, vistaram, the expansion, Brahma, the absolute, sampadhyate, he attains, tada, at that time. Welcome back. Hare Krishna. You got some of that cake from this morning, huh? Yeah. Yeah. You know what the occasion was? Should I tell him? It's 50 years since I joined the temple. They baked me a cake. They even took a picture. They'll be, yeah. There you go. Ananga Priya. You remember that name? She's the cook. All right. We are reading the translation to 31. Translation. When a sensible man, this is on page 562, when a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Purport. When one can see that the various bodies of living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul, and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees. in the material conception of life, we find someone a demigod, someone a human being, a dog, a cat, etc. This is material vision, not actual vision. The material differentiation is due to a material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit soul is one. The spirit soul, due to contact with material nature, gets different types of bodies. When one can see this, he attains spiritual vision. Thus, being freed from differentiations like man, animal, big, low, etc., one becomes purified in his consciousness and able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. How he then sees things will be explained in the next verse. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this naturally calls to mind a verse in the 5th chapter, but I must admit I don't know exactly which number it is. Yes, I do. Text 18, 518. Vidya vinaya sampanne brahmane gabihastini shuni chaiva sapake cha pandita samadarshanaha. This is on page 246. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater or outcast. So this idea of developing the spiritual vision, page 562. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies. So this is the idea of seeing through the eyes of Shastra that everyone is a spirit soul. First of all, you understand that I myself am a spirit soul, and I never was born, I never will die. I'm going through this body, step by step. Dehi nosmin yata dehi, Krishna explains the beginning of his instructions. Just as in this one body, the soul is passing through different stages. The body is changing from childhood to adolescence to middle age and old age and then finished. But the soul remains the same. We remain the same person throughout. Everyone can understand that. We feel like we're the same person we were when we were 10, 15, 20, whatever it may be, right? What's changed, of course, is the gross body and also the subtle body. The mind certainly changes. You have different ideas, different conceptions, and so forth. But you can understand, yes, I'm the same person. So what hasn't changed? The mind has changed, the body has certainly changed. The soul hasn't changed, the Atma, the self. And it's that soul that's the actual person. And when the body gives out, it's just a complicated machine, obviously. The soul has to leave, you know? And there's another body ready because he's cultivated a certain mindset, a certain set of desires and a certain activities, karma. It all goes taken into account. What is that verse? By higher authority, I'm sorry, these verses, I'm not reviewing them. By the demigods and the super soul, of course, are overseeing and watching everything we do. And so there's a record. And when we leave the body, that record is taken into account. There's another body just ready for us. Could hopefully human, maybe not, depending on our activities and our desires and the very complex consciousness that we develop throughout our whole life. Now, for animals, it's kind of automatic. They're moving up. They're not responsible. They don't have any karma. When that lion runs down the antelope, you know, oh, the poor antelope, you know, boom, it's finished. Lion doesn't get any bad karma for that. That's his nature. He doesn't have the sense of judgment or intelligence by which to have an ethical or moral sense, what is right and what is wrong. It's simply, you know, on instinct, what we call instinct. It's really the super soul telling him where to go and everything. So but they also don't have any opportunity to be self-realized and get liberation. They're simply going through, back up, up, up. That's why it said in one of my favorite verses, you probably heard before, Labdva sudurlam amidam bahusam bhavante manusham, that after many, many births, Labdva sudurlam amidam bahusam bhavante, literally means many, many births. births. Human being, you've come to this human form of life. It's very rare. And even rarer, in Lord Chaitanya's teaching to Rupa Goswami, he begins with this idea that there's so many different species of life, and out of them there's relatively few human species. Now this term species has to be understood. It's not what you find in the biology books when we say 400,000 species of life. There is a verse, I don't know the number of it, in the Bhagavatam that mentions how human beings are one species. Yes. So that's what the biologists will tell you. You know, they're not different species of human life, different varieties, yes. So that's what's mentioned, that the 400,000 different, how they measure it, I don't know, but the idea is that just the number of us, even that 8 billion figure which we passed, you may have heard of that, you know, it's now 8 billion. When I grew up it was like 2 billion, and 3, 5, 10, you know, now we're up to 8 billion. So it's a lot, you know, compared to 2 billion, but it's minuscule compared to the number of mosquitoes there are, the number of ants, the number of birds. The birds are dying off. But anyway, there's relatively few of us. So, so what's the same? We not just among human beings, but all living beings. When you see consciousness, how do you tell there's consciousness? When there's some evidence of movement, of reaction to stimuli, you know, even plants. There's the growth, the idea that there's growth. The trees are growing. I have a certain favorite walk that I take, not up Dawes, but up Everett's. Because I mentioned this one. There's a certain block. I don't know why it is, but there's old growth there. Most of these trees are, if they're 50 years old, I'd be surprised, you know. But these trees, you can see, they're probably at least 100 years old. They're bigger, they've grown out, you've seen they've had a trim here and trim there, somehow or other. So, but that's kind of a punishment. You know, to be stuck in a tree body for 50 to 100 years, not able to move, very rudimentary consciousness. It's not to be coveted, certainly. So anyway, what the whole idea of this verse and the other one, which is more famous, Vidya Vinaya Sampane, that those who have the spiritual vision, they see the soul. And they regard each living being as having a certain oneness. Not that they don't see the difference between a cow and a plant, you know, but that they see the oneness, that there are spirit souls everywhere. And because of that, they have regard for each living entity, understanding that each body is a temple of God, the super soul is in there. And Prabhupada makes this point, and so does the Shastra and elsewhere, that the regard for all living beings in the same way means that you try to hurt as few living entities as possible. You know, Prabhupada even says, in a very charming way, some of his mispronunciations, a Vaishnava would be very reluctant even to kill a mosquito. You know, even a mosquito. Now, there are other contexts where Prabhupada says, yes, you can, because if a living entity attacks you, you know, then you can, kill it. Of course, the mosquito isn't attacking for mortal, but then again, it carries a disease, so it might be. But there is a pastime where you know, India sometimes, as you well know, can be full of mosquitoes certain places, certain times. And Prabhupada was trying to sleep, and there were mosquitoes all over the place. And Truta Kirti, I think one of his main servants, asked Prabhupada, can we? Yes, you can, because they're attacking. It's in the Shastra. But anyway, the idea is that seeing that oneness it enables you to not react simply to the externals of whoever you're coming in touch with. You realize that you know, this is a conscious person, eternal, and I'm not going to allow his or her particular conditioning to get me all involved and not lose my equilibrium. You become tolerant. See. So this vision is important. When a sensible person ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies. Now this brings up the point of designations. There's one verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, very close to the beginning of the book, and it's kind of it pairs with the famous verse Andabilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Jnanavritam. This is the verse that defines what pure devotion is. It's kind of a foundational verse for this whole movement. And of course, it's directly in line with Lord Chaitanya taught Rupa Goswami. So, anya abhilashita shunyam. Shunyam means devoid completely of other desires. Other than what? Well, that'll be explained before the end of the verse. Anya abhilashita shunyam. And here's a sample of these other ashas or other desires you can have. Jnana karma jnanavritam. Now, the word avritam means to cover. So when your bhakti is not covered or adulterated or mixed with any material desire, and they fall into several categories, jnana and karma, and then etc. Jnana means desire for liberation, simply cultivating knowledge of Brahman so that you can merge into Brahman. That's jnana. And karma is everything else, all the material desires that we're so familiar with and we can see, that are based on sense desire and like that. So, anavritam, not covered or mixed or adulterated by any of these other desires. Okay, that's what it's not. What is it? Anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhakti uttama. This is the definition of the uttama bhakti, pure devotion. And that simply acting in a way that's favorable to the pleasure of Krishna. The more minutes of the day that you can do that, the more pure you are. The pure devotees, every waking moment is like that. And because every waking moment is like that, even when they're sleeping, they're dreaming like that they're serving Krishna for his pleasure. That's the definition. So this other verse, which is right near that, is similar to that. It means sarva upadi vinimuktam tatpadatvena nirmalam. So the word upadi means a designation, meaning based on generally on the body. Who are you? Well, I'm a white Jewish male, born in 1947. I'm no more Jewish than the bird out there. But the point is, that's who I was born. I could, that was my identity when I was 10 years old. But that's not who you are. That's just what you temporarily, you're occupying this temporary body for a few years, But just see how much problem that is out there, the whites and the blacks, it's ridiculous. But that's people see that way, and they act on that basis. This is ignorance. It's based on ignorance. We're all spirit souls. Prabhupada, he was so happy when he actually sent Brahmananda to Africa to preach, And this is a long story why he sent him to Africa to preach, but he sent him to Africa to open up Africa. Pretty big assignment. So he went to Kenya, and he went to Nairobi, and one of the reasons he went there is because there's many, many Indians there, right? Isn't it? Big community. So he was making some success. He had, programs. They had rented a big hall. I don't know if they bought anything right away. But he was getting pretty good crowds of Indians, but not the natives. So when Prabhupada came, he said, well, you're not preaching to the Africans? What's going on? So he said, you just have a big festival of chanting and a big feast. And you invited everybody. And the natives came and they were dancing like anything and chanting. And before long, there were some initiated devotees in Africa. No problem, And because it relates to the soul. So all of the conditioning that you have is related to your mind and your body. That's not you. But Krishna consciousness relates directly to the soul. So if you're acting on that platform, gradually you can discard these externals that are designations. So one who is free from all these false designations, sarvapadi vinima tatparatpena nirmalam, means completely pure. And what do you do? Rishikena rishikesha sevanam, bhaktir uchite. Here you find bhakti in general. A very nice definition. Rishikesha, Rishikam is a word for senses. Isha is the Lord. The Lord of the senses is Krishna. His name is used here. That name is mentioned in the early part of the Bhagavad Gita, Rishikesha. Rishikesha, Rishikena Sevanam. Very clever. Rishikena means with your senses, serving the Lord of the senses. In other words, even you come to the point of these senses aren't even mine. Yes, I'm temporarily in charge of them, But the real perfection of the senses, both the knowledge-acquiring senses and the active senses, the eyes, the ears, the touch, and everything, as well as the hands, the feet, whatever, is to serve the master of the senses with those senses. So when you see, perfect as the example is on the altar, and they're using their intelligence, of course. That's it's a very fine sense, you could say, and the hands and everything to decorate Krishna so that it'll be even more attractive and blissful and attract people. That's service. That's archana. Archana is meant for a lot of engagement of these senses, and all the services. So that's and it dissolves your false identification. It says, "Oh, no, I'm not, such and such. I'm not such and such old. I'm not this, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old. I'm eternal. We're all eternal. And as long as I'm in this body and I have some control over these senses, let me engage them in Christian service, and they become purified." What is that verse? Atakshi Krishna namani namave grayam indriyai. With these indriyais, these senses, these contaminated senses, we cannot perceive the significance or the meaning or the reality of the name, form, qualities of Krishna. But if you begin serving Krishna, beginning with the tongue, chanting his name and tasting Krishna prasadam, then eventually all the senses become purified and you can perceive the pure spirit. That's a important verse. So understanding, just reading these verses and trying to apply them to how we see ourselves and see this world is what the Bhagavad Gita is meant for. Is that so we change the way we live in the world, we see ourselves and relate to everything and everyone else. And that's part of Krishna consciousness. You had a question or a comment?
No, that was what you're saying.
But if you want to comment or say, use the mic because everyone's here. Right behind you. Sure, Chris.
Yeah, on plate 12, what you're...
okay.
It reminded me of that, so I went and looked for...
You're talking about the famous cowman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like what you were talking about earlier.
In what sense?
That recognition of the lives, animal and human.
Yeah. This is a very dramatic demonstration of, basically it's supposed to teach you. This is what's happened. If you're going to eat cows, then they're going to be born as you. You'll be born as them, and the same thing you did to them, they'll do to you. The famous "what goes around comes around." Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. This picture has been used 1,000,000 times in selling books. People. They get it. They explain it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of Prabhupada's main themes. Why he started the farms. That just show the value of cow protection, and how happy cows give so much more milk. He would go to New Vrindavan, and just the quality and the quantity of the milk would be so great. I mean, I never lived there for any length of time, but people said the milk sweets there are like, from a different planet because of the quality of the milk, because the cows are so happy. They used to play the Govindam song for the cows out and they would, be much more blissful and they give more milk, better milk. Yeah, they react. They feel the love, no question. Okay, should we go on? All right. 32. Anaditvan nirgunatvat panamatmayam abhyayaha shadirastopi kaunteya nakaroti nalipyate. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. Purport. A living entity appears to be born because of the birth of the material body, but actually the living entity is eternal. He is not born, and in spite of his being situated in the material body, he is transcendental and eternal. Thus he cannot be destroyed. By nature, he is full of bliss. He does not engage himself in any material activities, Therefore, the activities performed due to his contact with material bodies do not entangle him. So this is, by nature, he is full of bliss. Well, I think we can all agree that we haven't all experienced that reality all the time. But it's very encouraging. I mean, by Vedanta Sutra, you know, I don't know many Vedanta Sutras, but there's a few famous ones that I know. And one is Anandamayo Bhyasat. They're nice and easy to remember if you really try, because they're only like a few words. And they're full of meaning, you know. So Anandamaya Abhyasat means by seeing Krishna's Abhyasat, the practice of his life. Abhyasat means to practice, or it can mean the activities. So from knowing the activities of Krishna, Krishna Lila, we can see that he's full of Ananda. Even when he's killing the demons, you know, it's just play for him. It's all Lila. So he's Anandamaya Abhyasat, always full of bliss. But we can say in our present state, we're not always full of bliss. I think we can all agree. But by nature we are. Not to be blissful is unnatural for the soul. That's the conditioned state. It's a reduced state. We're covered over by Maya, and because of our delusion, we're suffering because of the temporary nature of our. Even if you're happy for a little while, you know that your mind is going to be ending. It ends. Material sense pleasure ends. So to hear about and to experience even the intimation of this blissful state, when you're in like an extended kirtan, or like I always go back to, maybe because of my most blissful times, Rathayatras, different Rathayatras I've been on, you know, because of these long kirtans, and there's Jagannath, you know, rolling through, and then the people, and and then you're feeling happy for an extended period of time. It's not this flickering Maya Sukhaya, you know, and so you can get an intimation of that Ananda state. And if we serious about practicing and chanting and trying to remember Krishna more and more and preaching, then we'll feel that way all the time. Not fully, you know, full of bliss and falling on the ground, but still there's a certain satisfaction which gives you the understanding. Yeah, it's not, my happiness is not dependent really on the state of my senses. You know, in this crazy, desperate attempt to prolong one's youth into old age, and you know, yeah, it's good to stay. You know, I'm not arguing against healthful living, but if that's your hope that somehow, you know, even in my 70s and 80s, I'll enjoy with my wife, you know, or something, it's crazy. It's nuts. It's pathetic, and unfortunately, it's tragic also, because that's a waste of human life. But you can. But why could we say that? Because there is a way that you can stay blissful into old age, because it's not dependent on the senses. And we saw it with Prabhupada. We saw how Prabhupada, you know, even in elderly, and his health was obviously failing, and yet still he was serene and blissful and happy. Especially when he saw how the movement was growing and things like that, you know. Because he saw that people were becoming Krishna conscious. It wasn't some sense gratification. He was happy to see others happy. This is the right? Pada sukha sukhi and pada dukkha dukhi. Not pada dukkha sukhi. You know, that's called schadenfreude. Demonic, sociopathic. There's so much of that out here. I mean, it's such a tragedy. This every few days, maybe if a week goes by and there's no mass shooting, that's a good week. You know, oh come on, we never had this, and you know, this is the last 10 years. You know, that has happened like this. What does that come from? Where is that? Because there's more and more people who are, you know, the atmosphere, the fear and the manipulation of people's consciousness in order to basically to just soak them for money and power. And that's, I mean, there's so many demons that we see in the Shastra. And that's what they're doing. And so how to defend oneself about that, and to be a force for good countering that mode of ignorance and the demoniac forces. I mean, we read in chapter 16 will come again. What is the nature of the demon? You know, Krishna, he actually takes the role of a demon. He speaks like a demon for a couple of verses. Ishvaroham ham bogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. You know what that means?
I am the master. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. No one is as intelligent as me, you know. Yeah, I'll perform some religious ceremony just to live. That's called dambha. Dambha. That's the first quality of the demons. Dambo, darpo, abhimanam cha. False pride, pretension, hypocrisy, and all of these different things. So this is, you know, when that takes over a society, it's very, very dangerous. Especially you get these atom bombs everywhere. So we have to be ready for anything. And that means to take shelter of the holy name. Krishna will protect. I mean, it's not that your body gets protected. Of course, everyone has to leave the body, but to protect the consciousness so that you can remain Krishna conscious in every situation. And we saw that, you know, with some of our great devotees who left in the last few years. Jendranandana Prabhu, Shamali, Madhusudan. It's sometimes, you know, I think they're the lucky ones. They're fortunate to have left in such a way, surrounded by devotees chanting, you know, not some, oh, the sirens are blowing, what does it mean? Yeah, they threw the nuclear bombs. All right, let's, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. What are we going to do? I mean, when I grew up, this was a reality, you know, in the 50s, the 60s, 1963, you know, the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is what's going on. This pandemic, people freaked out because it's when everybody, you know, there's death. I thought I was safe, you know, it was all stay in the news. No, it's not in the news. It's in your, you know, where you go shopping. So it's what is that? Janma mitya jada avadi dukkha doshana darshanam. One's meant to see the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. And always have that as, yeah, I got to get serious. I have to be serious now at all moments, because at any moment. What's that verse? I can't remember the Sanskrit now. But this, in English goes like this: remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly, the holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Somehow the Sanskrit escapes me, but you get the meaning. Okay, any comments, questions on this one? All right, text 33. Yata sarvakatam saukshmyan akasham nopalipyate sarvatravastito dehe tatatma nopalipyate. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Purport. The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else is there. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this. So this is, again, just understanding the nature of the soul. And when you really adopt that understanding that you're aloof and that you're just like riding on this complicated machine, then yeah, I mean, when you know, you can get sick or you can get injured or just get old, and certainly that puts a crimp in your activities, but it's not as apocalyptic, you know, as if you're completely identifying with the body, which most people are, and you see, oh no, you know, what's happening? My life is coming to an end. Yeah, this particular chapter of your life is coming to an end, but you are eternal. I mean, I remember when my father died, and I went, of course, to the funeral, and my mother was there, and I was trying to comfort her, and I was giving her verses from the Bhagavad Gita, from the 2nd chapter. You know, Dehi nosmin yata dehe. Henry was his name. He said he's not dead. He's passed on to another life, and she took great comfort from that. She was definitely open to it. You know, at that point. because it's the truth. And most people want to believe that, but they fantasize, oh yeah, I must have gone to heaven. Well, maybe. That's not the point. But it should open up our vision and change our understanding of what's necessary to strive for. Because after all, without becoming pure, we're going to come back again. And we're going to have to suffer in the womb and have to suffer birth and all this stuff and climate change and all that, you know. But if we are able to perfect our Krishna consciousness, which is not completely impossible in this lifetime, then we don't have to come back. We can go back to Godhead. So that can become a real impetus for getting serious, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And the wonderful thing about it is ultimately that if you really become advanced, then liberation is not the main consideration. Nadanang najanang nasundarim, Lord Chaitanya has taught us. Not only doesn't he want wealth and followers and a beautiful wife or whatever else, he doesn't even want liberation. He's not asking for that. What is he asking? Just even birth after birth, unalloyed devotion unto your lotus feet. Now these God himself, is Krishna himself, teaching us how to pray like that. Guiding us that, yes, just like we're reading the passage of the Bhagavatam, one of the lessons there I keep realizing now is that don't mix up your bhakti with material desires. Because that's ultimately self-defeating. Even if you're fulfilled in material desire, that just means you're more bound to this world. We should learn how to pray to become detached from those material desires. That's why I love these verses from the Goswamis. You know, practically every verse, like this is one. Bhujanga da pachandagas buddha da kanda chudankore nirankasha jaganvada brahmina baddha bringam brahme patanga duhitustuti vanukati rakeri prihe paraspurutume mahustvai mukunda shuddharati. I'm forgetting the Gita verses, I'm remembering these verses. Anyway, what he says is, you wear the best of crests, a crown of perfect peacock plumes. Your dancing glances stun the bees meandering midst the blooms. You relish love play in a cottage by Kalindi's shore. O Krishna, may pure love for you be mine forevermore. This is what we should ultimately pray for. It includes everything else. Liberation, forget it. That's you know, if this verse is prayer is fulfilled, then liberation is already there. You don't have to worry about that. So that's. But here, you know. We're not part of this world. Talk about aliens. Oh, are there aliens coming? What about those UFOs? You know, we're the aliens. We don't belong here. We're exiles from the spiritual world. This is not our home. We try to make a home in a place that's, you know, not suitable or antithetical really to your spiritual. We use the facilities of this world and the facilities of this body in order to connect with Krishna. And then when we leave the body, leave it all behind, and in our spiritual body we go on to the spiritual world. That's the whole idea. It's possible. And at least we should try to make as much progress as possible. We've been through so many lives before, so maybe 1 or 2 more lives will be purified, but at least make some progress. There's so many verses like that. Prabhupada would always quote in the 5th chapter, 1st canto, Chaktva swadharmam chadanam bhajang hade bhajan napokfo tapate tato yadi yatra kavaba dhramabuddha mushikim korvata apto abhajatam swadharmata. Suppose one gives up one's duties in the varnashram system. Hare Krishna, welcome. There'll be darshan at 8:15. Darshan of the deities. Please have a seat. We'll have a few more minutes of Bhagavad Gita. And so we say, Chaktva swadharmam, giving up your roles, and he joins the Hare Krishnas. Basically, you take up bhakti yoga, you know, but due to one reason or another, you don't complete the course. Where is there any loss? Whatever you could accomplish in bhakti, that's your permanent asset, right? You take it with you. But anything you accomplish materially, you leave behind. And that's the next part of the verse. Yatra kvavabadana buddha mushikim korvarta apto abhajatam swadharmata. But what about that person who very nicely follows his swadharma, Brahman, Vaishya, or Shudra, whatever. But there's no bhakti. Where is there anything good for him? He may very nicely follow it, but if you're not cultivating bhakti, then at the end you lose whatever you have materially, leave it behind, and who knows where you go, you see? Therefore, next verse, tasyaiva heto prayate kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatama parida. Therefore, the intelligent person, kovida, should strive for that thing which you cannot attain from going up to the highest planet, down to the lowest planet, not in the material world. What is that? Bhakti for Krishna. Because after all, because you have a certain, and this is a very revolutionary idea, you have a certain amount of material happiness that's due to your karma, and a certain amount of material distress. That's programmed in. You can't change it. You may think you strive, or I'll be settled. But somehow you're going to get your measure of misery. You know, somehow it'll come. Doesn't matter if you're rich, whatever you are. And you'll have your certain measure of sense pleasure. So there's no point in trying to increase one and decrease the other. But what you can do is increase your bhakti, increase your relation to Krishna. And then the other will play out as it is, but you will be making real progress. You will not lose that in your next life. It's a permanent asset. Therefore, an intelligent person will strive for bhakti yoga. And you'll enjoy a certain amount of, pleasure. That'll come, just like it's a really good feast, That's part of the, that's, of course that's transcendental. I don't want to pull that into it. But that's the idea. Well, any discussion on any of these points? The soul is very subtle and does not mix with the body at all. So,
like the analogy here, like the air doesn't mix up.
Yes.
Water and mud.
Yeah.
Same way, soul is not conditioned to the material accumulation.
Yeah. It certainly seems to be, and he says at one point in the beginning, it's spread throughout the body, the consciousness. But ultimately, it's radically different. And when the body doesn't function anymore, boom, you're gone. And the body just reverts to its elements. Important understanding. All right, we have time for one more. Text 34. Yata pakashayat yeka Kṛṣṇam lokam ravihi
Krishnam lokam imam ravihi.
Chaitram chaiti tata Kṛṣṇam
Kshetram kshetri tatha Krishnam
Prakashayati bharata.
prakashyati bharata.
Another analogy. As soon as you see yata, you're going to probably see tata, and there'll be another analogy. Oh, son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Purport. There are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in the Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and the sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place, but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul, just as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body, and as soon as the soul is passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the Supreme Consciousness, is not supreme, because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body. But the Supersoul, which is situated in all bodies, as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. That is the difference between Supreme Consciousness and individual consciousness. So, he's very much emphasizing this point, the separation of the soul from the body, and that the consciousness is spread. In the early chapters, chapter 2 is described that the consciousness is carried through the bloodstream. Just like I'm sitting here, and usually one of my limbs falls asleep. Luckily, I haven't fallen over yet. But Narayan Maharaj, I think, mentioned that once. He gave this class. He was all fired up. He stepped off the Vyasasana, and his leg was completely numb. He fell down.
But that's because the blood hasn't circulated. Why can we cut the hair without any pain at all? Because there's no blood in there. The fingernails, right? They're not really alive. So it's being carried by the bloodstream. But then when the heart stops beating, the consciousness withdraws, finished. So that's the nature of it. But Krishna, through the super soul, the consciousness is spread through every body. And so it's inconceivable. But we all have the same super soul in us, a different expansion of the same person. And that's one of the reasons why when devotees get together and they glorify Krishna, that's such a basic principle. Because the super souls in each of their hearts are becoming very happy and giving them, intelligence and bliss and like that. Yeah. Go ahead. Hope it's a quick answer because we run out of time.
Krishna. Yeah, so what's the difference between soul and super soul?
What is the difference?
Is soul consciousness the same thing? And then super soul is Krishna?
The soul is, by nature, they have the same quality, consciousness, but one is super conscious, and we're conscious partially of this body. This body is kind of like a little universe, We're the supposedly the commanding, force in the body. We're really not. We're trying to be. But it's one of quantity. We're qualitatively the same, but quantitatively much different. Even the qualities of Krishna. We can have 50 of them to a certain degree, certain amount of beauty, a certain amount of intelligence and cleverness, making jokes. But Krishna is supreme in every one of these fields, So it's a question of quantity and quality. Qualitatively the same, but quantitatively much different. Drop of water in the ocean, same, it's salty, but it's different. So therefore, our natural role is to be linked up with the super soul through service, with Krishna, and then all of our spiritual qualities can manifest naturally, and we can become finally relieved from this illusion that with this body. Or these bodies, these different bodies.
Quantitative same?
Quantitative different, qualitative the same. Qualitative, yeah. Yeah, quantity much different. Okay, we need to adjourn. There'll be darshan in a few minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.